welcome back to R.M.Aviation. Yet again, just so you know, we do have the art competition coming up. So if you would like to go to the post section of this YouTube channel and have a look, you're more than welcome to apply into that competition. We will be doing a specialized video just for that. Today we're going to be discussing the collapse of Pan American World Airways, or formerly known as Pan Am, which was once considered the premier airline globally and is often regarded to one of the most significant events in the history of commercial aviation. Pan Am was a pioneering force in the airline industry, but a combination of internal challenges and challenging market conditions and external factors led to its downfall. The airline ultimately ceased operations in 1991. So here's an in-depth analysis of the factors that contributed to the collapse of Pan Am. The financial struggles and debt. One of the primary reasons for Pan Am's collapse was its ongoing financial troubles, which were compounded by high debt levels. The excessive debt load. Pan Am accumulated a large amount of debt throughout the 1980s. This debt was a result of both investment in new expensive aircraft and the acquisition of competing airlines. This company took on high levels of borrowing to finance its expansion, which placed immense pressure on its financials. The operating losses. Despite it being a leader in the international air travel, Pan Am struggled to remain profitable. Its operating costs were high, particularly due to its large number of long-haul international routes it maintained. High fuel costs, labour costs, and maintenance of its ageing fleet contributed to its inability to achieve sustainability and profitability. The costly fleet. Pan Am's fleet was large. The airline made significant investments in new aircraft, such as the Boeing 747 in the 1970s. However, these large, fuel-hungry planes were expensive to maintain and operate, further weighing down the airline's finances, especially during the time of rising fuel costs. Deregulation and increased competition. The airline industry underwent massive changes, and the Airline Deregulation Act of 1978, which had a profound implication on Pan Am and other legacy carriers. The deregulation impact. Prior to deregulation, the US government controlled airfares, routes, and entry market, which allowed major carriers like Pan Am to dominate international markets with limited competition. However, after deregulation, domestic markets opened up to an increased competition. Smaller low-cost airlines began offering competitive fares and services, particularly on shorter routes that Pan Am had historically dominated. Global competition. While Pan Am had a strong global network, it was no longer the sole player on international routes. The airline faced increased competition from European and Middle Eastern carriers like British Airways and Emirates that were emerging with more modern fleets and more competitive pricing strategies. These customers were often able to provide services at lower prices, challenging Pan Am's long-standing dominance in the international market. Shrinking market share. As competition grew, Pan Am's market share eroded. The airline found it increasingly difficult to maintain its position, especially in the domestic market, where it was no longer a dominant player after deregulation. Management issues and strategic failures. Pan Am struggled with several management and strategic issues that hindered its ability to adapt to changing market conditions. The leadership instability. The airline suffered from a lack of stable leadership and a failure to make strategic decisions in a timely manner. Various CEOs and senior managers had different visions for the airline. They often failed to take a bold, cohesive actions to address the emerging issues. The airline's leadership also struggled to shift from a focus on long-haul international routes to more profitable domestic operations. The expansions and failures. Pan Am made a series of poor strategic decisions and related to expansion. Notably in the 1980s, the airline expanded into the domestic route by purchasing national airlines. However, the integration of national airlines was poorly managed and did not bring the expected returns. The purchase ultimately burdened Pan Am with more debt without significantly increasing its profitability or market presence in the US, and missed technological advancements. As the airline industry evolved, Pan Am was slow to adapt to the emerging trends. For instance, it failed to embrace newer, more fuel-efficient aircraft quickly enough, and it was late to upgrade its reservation system for customer services, which put it at a disadvantage compared to its competitors who embraced technology more rapidly. High operating costs and fuel volatility. A key factor that contributed to Pan Am's collapse was its inability to manage high operating costs, particularly the cost of fuel, which became more volatile in the 1970s and early 80s. Rising fuel prices. In the 1970s, fuel prices soared due to the OPEC oil embargo and the other geopolitical factors, drastically increased the cost of flying. Pan Am, which operated a large fleet of jumbo jets like the 747, was particularly affected by these rising costs as its planes consumed vast amounts of fuel. While competitors adjusted their fleets and focused on more fuel-efficient routes, Pan Am struggled to manage these costs effectively. Labour costs. Pan Am also faced high labour costs due to its union agreements. The airline had frequent labour disputes and strikes, which further exacerbated its financial difficulties. Labour agreements were often costly and often unmanageable during periods of decline in revenue. The Lockerbie bombing, the Pan Am Flight 103. The most significant external factors that contributed to Pan Am's demise was the Lockerbie bombing in 1988, where Pan Am Flight 103 travelling to London, New York, from London to New York was bombed over Scotland, killing 270 people. Impact on the brand and reputation. The terrorist attack was devastating for Pan Am's reputation. The airline, which was a symbol of safety and reliability, became associated with tragedy. While Pan Am was not directly responsible for the bombing, the event severely damaged its brand image, making it less attractive to passengers and investors alike. Legal and financial fallout. Pan Am faced significant legal costs and liabilities in the aftermath of the bombing, as well as a decline in international travel due to the heightened security concerns over the attack. The bombing was not only a humanitarian tragedy, but also a financial blow to the airline at a critical time in its decline. The acquisition by Delta Airlines and final collapse. Despite attempts to recover, Pan Am continued to suffer from poor financial performance, shrinking market share, and operational inefficiencies. The airline filed for bankruptcy in 1991, and its assets were eventually acquired by Delta Airlines in 1992. The financial struggles. Pan Am's efforts to restructure and revive itself through various cost-cutting measures and focusing on international operations were unsuccessful. The airline's inability to modernize its fleet, improve its customer service, and adapt to the changing competitive landscape ultimately led to its failure. The sales of assets. Delta purchased Pan Am Pacific routes and other valuable assets, marking the end of Pan Am as an independent entity. The collapse of Pan Am symbolized the end of an era in American aviation, as it was the first U.S. airline to offer international services and was a pioneer in modern commercial aviation. In conclusion, the collapse of Pan Am Airways was the result of a complex interplay of financial mismanagement, strategical errors, and increasing competition, higher operational costs, and the external events like the Lockerbie bombing. While Pan Am's legacy as a pioneer in the aviation industry is undeniable, its failure to adapt to the changes in the airline industry, including deregulation and rising competition, left it vulnerable to collapse. The airline's inability to modernize its fleet, manage costs effectively, and navigate the challenges of a competitive global market ultimately led to its demise. Thank you all again for tuning in to R.M.Aviation. Like and subscribe if you like this kind of content. And please leave a comment. And also, have a nice day, because I know it's a wonderful world to live in. So have a nice day. And come back tomorrow for the next episode. Thank you.